Ever since the N64, third-party support has been Nintendo's biggest weakness. It got better on the Switch, but in 2026, two games might finally change that for good. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade, and Resident Evil Requiem aren't just big releases. They're proof that Nintendo, with the Switch 2, is being treated like a real third-party platform for the first time in generations. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade, and Resident Evil Requiem are the two biggest major third-party releases for the Nintendo Switch 2 for the first part of the year in early 2026. And while both games are important on their own, together they represent something much bigger. These are the most important third-party releases that Nintendo has had in a very long time. Not just because they're big games, but because of what they mean for the future of the Nintendo Switch 2. And to understand why these two games matter so much, let's start with Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. With Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, we finally have the return of modern AAA Final Fantasy on a Nintendo platform. This isn't some spin-off like what we got with Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, which it's a cool game, it's a good game, but it's not the mainline major Final Fantasy. And this isn't just some downgraded port either. Most, you had to look really hard at the game to be able to tell any major differences between between the Switch 2 version of the game and between the PS5 or the Xbox Series version. Square Enix has done a really good job with the port. The performance and presentation really matters with the Switch 2 version of the game, and they are clearly treating this like a real big proper launch, not just a courtesy port of, hey, here, finally take this game. They're treating this like a big deal, like it's a major release. There's just a different energy around the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on the Switch 2 that we just haven't seen from Square Enix, especially when it comes to releasing a major game on a Nintendo console, at least not for a long time. I mean, for the Switch 2 version of the game, they are flying out Naoki Hamaguchi, hopefully I said that right, but they are flying him out. He is the director behind Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which they've already confirmed is coming to the Switch 2. But they are flying him out for a big launch event at the Nintendo New York store, and it appears they might be bringing him out to the Nintendo store in San Francisco as well. So both Nintendo and Square Enix are treating the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade like a big deal. And I know that it is a port of a 6-year-old game now, but it means so much more than that. If Final Fantasy VII Remake succeeds on the Switch 2, like I think it will, and there's already some early indicators of it, having some pretty good sales potential, like the pre-order is already showing up on the Nintendo eShop. It's in like the top 10 already. Now, I'm not saying that I think that Final Fantasy VII Remake on the Switch 2 is going to just sell millions upon millions of copies, because, the game has already done pretty good on the PlayStation, on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. But I could really see them moving another million or two units thanks to the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the game. And this could really completely change how Square Enix views Nintendo as a platform going forward. They've already adjusted their multi-platform strategy, but depending on how well this game does, and then how well Final Fantasy VII Rebirth does, that could change the level of how they prioritize their development, and how they prioritize the development of their big games for on the Nintendo Switch 2. Not just the smaller AA style of games like your Octopaths or just any of the like HD 2D games. But yeah, the big games going for your Final Fantasies, your Kingdom Hearts, those type of games. So Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade on the Nintendo Switch 2 is a very important and one of the most important third-party releases early in the year on the Nintendo Switch 2, but it's not the only one. Resident Evil Requiem is just as big of a deal for the Nintendo Switch 2 as Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it might even have just a little bit more pressure on it than Final Fantasy VII. Because with Final Fantasy VII Remake, that's a port, so the sales pressure on that game probably isn't on the same level as it is for a Resident Evil Requiem, which is a brand new game coming out day and date, which that is such a huge deal as well. But it's coming out day and date with the other platforms. So it's going to be really interesting to see and just watch how the sales breakdown between the different versions of the game, especially in the different regions. Like, will Resident Evil 9 in Japan sell better on the Switch 2 than the PS5 version? Will the Switch 2 version get anywhere near the level of sales as Resident Evil on PlayStation 5 in North America? These are things that all remain to be seen, but Capcom has been one of Nintendo's best and most reliable third-party partners. Like, if it wasn't for Capcom, the original Switch wouldn't even had the level of RAM that it had there, because they told them, like, hey, we need to have at least this much so that they could get like Monster Hunter Rise working on the platform. And Nintendo has listened to them and added that onto the original Switch. So they've been very important for Nintendo. And so far, early on in the life of the Switch 2, Capcom has been going all out. And especially we're seeing that with how they're handling Resident Evil Requiem on the Nintendo Switch 2. It's not just like some regular launch, just like, hey, here you get Resident Evil Requiem. It's not just an afterthought. Capcom and Nintendo are working together to ensure the success of Resident Evil Requiem on the Switch 2. They are working together on the marketing of the game, with Nintendo getting the newest trailers at some of their Nintendo Directs before they go out for the other platforms. They're getting a special amiibo for Grace, themed controllers, and even a special edition of the game with the Generations Pack, where you get Resident Evil 9 and Resident Evil 7 and 8 all in one package for the Nintendo Switch 2. Capcom isn't just testing the waters with the Nintendo Switch 2. They are showing a real commitment, and this reinforces that the Switch 2 isn't just a secondary platform anymore. It can be and is a viable platform for third-party games. And Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade and Resident Evil Requiem, these two games are showing how important the Nintendo Switch 2 is to third-party publishers, and especially to third-party publishers in Japan. Nintendo, they are helping them out. They are creating space for these releases for these games to succeed. They're giving them focused marketing with the Nintendo Directs and all the special Pro controllers and amiibos and big launch events, and one of the big hurdles that third-party publishers would come up against when it came to putting their games on Nintendo systems is that there might be some big first-party game coming up that would overshadow their release. But Nintendo has made sure to clear the way for these two games. So far, early in 2026, on the first party side of things, we did get a pretty cool Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Animal Crossing on the Nintendo Switch 2, but that is a upgrade and an update for an older game. And it's a game that you can play alongside another game like a Final Fantasy VII Remake. And then Nintendo's next big game that comes out in February is Mario Tennis Fever. But again, that is another game that you can still play alongside a big story-based adventure game world to get sucked into, like Resident Evil Requiem. So Nintendo isn't just allowing third parties to exist on their platforms this generation. They are actively making room for them and giving them every opportunity to exceed. And if these games sell well, they become proof that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a place where the big AAA games can thrive and succeed, but that also that performance parity matters. You have to treat the platform and the audience with respect, and you do that Nintendo's audience will show up for your games, and that the Switch 2 is worth investing real development resources into, not just giving the game off to some low tier port studio, but making sure that your game is up to the same standards on the Switch 2 as it is across all of the platforms. Now, let me just say this, that nobody realistically should be or is expecting that the Nintendo Switch 2 version of games will be the best performing versions of the game, but it doesn't have to be. Many Switch 2 owners are willing to sacrifice the top of the line performance to be able to have the option of playing the game however you want to, whether it is on the TV and then being able to play it handheld or on the go or on the plane or in the car or on the break at work. And if Final Fantasy VII Remake, Intergrade, and Resident Evil Requiem succeed, they don't just benefit themselves. They can change what third-party support on Switch 2 looks like for the rest of the generation. Will we continue to see more day and date releases for the big third-party games? Will the third-party publishers be willing to put bigger budgets on Nintendo Switch 2 versions of games and have fewer compromises on Nintendo platforms, keeping things at parity? Let me know in the comments what third-party games you want to see on the Switch 2 next. And if you want more Nintendo Switch 2 discussions like this, where we break down the cool and interesting topics that matter, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And for more on why I think things are looking good for the Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026, make sure you check out this video right here. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. This is Justin with Just Keep Playing. I'll see you later. Have a good one. Peace.